And now I'm afraid to go out without my pepper spray. It's supposed to put no camping signs up.
Many in Colorado are forced to live in their cars. This reports on what could be Colorado's first mobile neighborhood.
I think something has to change because people are going to just leave California.
Particularly problematic encampments like this one next to a school, offering $500 gift cards and a motel room to the residents.
I'm wondering where that money is even going.
People will call the cops and say that you're parked there and run you off. And people refer to it as the Walter White vehicle. We're not bad people.
Hey everyone, welcome to RVing with Joe. A lot of you folks had a lot of comments and feedback on the previous video I did about the homeless and RV problem getting worse. I really want to appreciate all the feedback we got. We got over 350,000 views on that video, and it's still going up, over 5,000 likes, and over 1,300 comments. And that was an important part. A lot of folks had a lot of important things to say. There were a few rough things to say, and I appreciate almost everyone's feedback on those comments. We also had a few copycat videos come out on the subject, but that's all right. I guess I should be proud that my videos are being cloned or being copied, but that's all right. Right here at RVing with Joe is the place to find the original videos. So looking at the comments, we had a lot of comments that suggested, of course, that, you're not homeless if you're in an RV. I've talked about this in previous videos regarding homelessness in RVs. If you're in a $200,000 brand new Class A driving around the country living off your retirement savings, you're not exactly homeless, right? You're doing it all by choice. I always say if you're pooping in a bucket and you can't empty your gray and black tanks easily or at all, then chances are you're closer maybe to being homeless. But I understand that line is different for everybody. And I also understand that a lot of people really feel a sense of home and domicile when they have an RV, even if it's living on the street or living in a parking lot. When you're inside that home, it feels like you're home.
People who are living in RVs consider themselves to be housed.
A lot of comments talked about it sort of being about the gap between rich and poor and that only getting worse. And to a great extent, that's true. I mean, as you look at any modern economy here in the Western world, especially USA and Canada, there is a growing gap between the poor and the rich. The middle class is getting squeezed and turned into the working class. And this is just a kind of mathematic reality.
11,000 people live like this across Los Angeles County by latest count, which was February last year, in RVs, recreational vehicles designed more for rural recreation than long-term urban living.
It's been getting worse.
Absolutely.
Is it helping you be the judge? Homeless population in LA growing 10% over the last year.
Wages just haven't kept up with productivity growth over the last 30, 40 years. And as long as that continues, expect more people to be homeless, period. And then an important suggestion that people made, and that I'm going to address a little more here in this video, is the idea that these cities, these towns, these provinces, that they should make vacant space available to these RVers so that they can pair it with some portable bathrooms and some fresh water. And this will work as far as getting RVers into a specific place that's legitimized where they can stay and try to get back on their feet. Now, these are often called like safe parking areas, safe RV and car parking areas. They're made for folks living in their RVs, but they're also a place for people who are living in their cars. There are many ways states are dealing with this. Some, like when I was in Oregon, who built these really oversized rest areas alongside the freeway, clearly had dozens, if not 100 people living in their cars and RVs, but they moved once a day. So they were really good about moving everyone along. But really, these safe RV lots that are really dedicated, almost like homeless shelters for RVs and cars. And this is what a lot of states are employing with just using vacant space. You don't have to install sewer. Maybe you have to drop some power lines, but that's a lot less expensive than installing a whole bunch of sewer and plumbing.
We have been looking for a location to add another tool kind of in our toolkit as we are trying to come up with all kinds of ways to support our unhoused family, friends, and neighbors. Since this is a county property that is vacant, we thought what a great spot. It's big enough. It will accommodate 14 RVs. We were able to make sure that they have access to all the appropriate hookups that RVs need to really be habitable.
Just focus on them coming in and stabilizing to actually celebrating being here together in the spirit of the holidays.
Now, we've seen this in the big cities of California, like Los Angeles, San Diego, Oakland, and the whole Alameda County area that Oakland is in. We've seen them up here in Seattle, Washington, Eugene, Oregon, Portland, Oregon. But it's not just the blue states. Texas, Indiana, they're joining some of these states and creating some of these spaces. If you think about all the costs for cleanup and law enforcement and towing and disruption of the community that comes along with RVs on the street, then you can imagine comparing that to just go ahead and have the city invest in a vacant lot and let the people stay there. You pay for a little bit of security, and overall it's probably going to cost the city less than all of that enforcement and cleanup costs. It's not perfect, but it's the lesser of two evils. Now, safe parking lots don't come without controversy. As with most solutions and most ideas, there's always a flip side. Unanticipated consequences are always part of any large deployment or solution out there. Sometimes, depending on where they build these safe lots, it can create a conflict with the community who's already living on the streets nearby.
We know Northeast 33rd Drive is a hot spot for people who camp and live in their RVs. And I think originally when people learned of the location of this safe rest park was going to be one street over from Northeast 33rd, we thought, what a great idea, right? What they didn't anticipate was that the people out here on Northeast 33rd have such a strong community. They're almost threatened by a structured, gated community moving in and trying to get them to move in as well.
All in support of a group of homeless people who are suing the city.
Ariel, we got a copy of a lawsuit filed last night in federal court against the city.
And before we get into the next controversial aspect of these safe lots, a lot of the folks here who are watching right now probably are pretty, used to, after a hard day at work, or maybe if they're retired, a hard day doing stuff, coming home at the end of the day, wanting to have a beer. I'm not saying people are alcoholics. I'm not saying people drink a lot, but it's a common thing, I think, both in US and Canada, to want to come home at the end of the day, especially if you've had a rough day or a rough week, and sit down and have a beer. Or maybe it's a mixed drink. Whatever's your bag. Maybe you're in a legal weed state and it's smoking a little joint. Whatever that thing is that's perfectly legal in your home, in your state. Let's say you're in rough times and you decide that, hey, for a little while, you're going to take your RV and you're going to park it at one of these safe lots while you get back on your feet. You've lost your job, you've lost your home, maybe you got divorced, whatever the problems are. And you get into one of these safe lots and you get established for maybe a few weeks, you get showered up, you get cleaned up, you get back on your feet, and maybe you pick up a job, right? That's the idea here, right? You get into these things and you pick up a job, you start getting on your feet a little bit. You've gotten a couple paychecks now, you've been going for a couple of weeks, you go shopping at the end of the week and you decide, hey, I'm going to, get myself a beer. Nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, you've kind of earned it now, you're starting to get on back on your feet. You got your paycheck, and spending just a couple of dollars on a beer is not going to hurt anybody. But if you're living in one of these safe parking lots, beer is not allowed. And this is where I'm going to get to my point. Beer is not allowed. Drugs are not allowed. Even if you're in a legal weed state, no weed around. Can't even have a gummy, right? And if you're caught with any of that, you're going to lose your space, right? These are the rules. These are the rules of homeless shelters, which makes sense because people are living in homeless shelters sort of as roommates, and that's a pretty tight situation. I can get why they ban drugs and alcohol there. You can go to a bar, but now, you're spending $7, $10 on a draft beer when you could have spent a few dollars, especially if you're getting back on your feet. And you certainly can't just go take a beer and drink it on the street because that's illegal. Hopefully you see my point here. And that is, when you move into these type of safe parking lots, when people decide to move in, one of the things they have to do is give up freedoms. I think a lot of people who follow my channel are pretty big on having their personal freedoms, and freedom is important to them. And one thing that you have to give up when you move into a homeless shelter or move into one of these safe parking lots is freedom. You don't get the freedom to have a beer. That's gone. And there's a whole bunch of other freedoms that go away as well. You can imagine it's going to prevent a lot of people from moving off the street and into these RV parks. Now, if they're paying for an RV park, of course, right, they get to drink beer in their RV all they want. But if it's a free one from the city, well, then they can't. And maybe, again, some of you might think, damn straight, that's right, no drugs, no alcohol, that's that. Others might say, hey, as long as you're telling them that, as long as they can't have their God-given right to have a beer at the end of a workday, you're going to disincentivize people from moving in. And you're going to have to create incentives to get people to go from their freedom of their RV to the lack of freedom that comes with these established safe parking lots or homeless shelters even.
And in order for them to leave that RV, sometimes we have to incentivize.
Offering $500 gift cards and a motel room to the residents.
And there's also examples where to get services, to get to the next level, right? You want to get out of your RV, you want to get into a home. Well, a lot of these places will offer you the ability to get into some kind of subsidized home or something they've arranged, but you have to give up everything you own in your RV.
They're going to be confiscating everything I've got, everything I own.
This man, who's been at the site for 3 months, says he was told if he wants transitional housing, like a tiny home, he must leave his vehicle and belongings behind.
No, I'm not going to do that.
So now after you've kind of moved out of your house and into your RV, the only thing left you have in this world, you're carting around the last of the stuff that you own in this world. And that security you have to give up and give to the state and give up ownership of so you can move into some kind of shelter location or a tiny home. That's, again, a lot to ask for a lot of Americans and Canadians who are a little concerned about their freedom and their ability to engage in freedom. It's a big concern for a lot of people. And would you be willing to give up your freedom to get some help? It's a hard ask. And then sadly, after doing all this research and finding all these safe parking lots, I'm finding some that have opened that were sort of pioneering this process are now already closing, like this one in Portland.
It's called the Sunderland RV Safe Park. Earlier this month, the city of Portland announced the site is closing this spring. About 70 people currently stay there. The RV park opened in July of 2023. It was the first city-run shelter for vehicles in Portland. Before that, the Portland Bureau of Transportation used the land for maintenance operations. They moved those operations to another location to accommodate the shelter, and they need to move back into the spot on Sunderland.
I don't understand how they can't find another parking lot to put your trucks versus putting people out on the street.
We also had folks suggest that people who are kind of living homeless or living in some of these rest areas or groups band together and just sort of build a co-op or their own RV park. And I tried to dive into this in a previous video, which I'll link right here, where looking at the cost of building a new RV park. If you're living in an RV semi-homeless, you probably don't have the financial means to invest in a co-op to build a new RV park. And so you just have to ask, is RV housing even really a scalable solution? I mean, RVs, when maintained, are excellent living environments. They provide most of the comforts of a home, and they can, in the right situation, be basically just as good as a home for a lot of people, just as good as a house. Yes, they require a lot of maintenance, but they're not the hardest thing to maintain. And if you're not worried about the looks, then you can maintain them quite well, right? You can always lather more stuff on the roof to keep the leaks coming in. You know, Gorilla Tape goes a long way if you don't care how it looks. So they can be an excellent solution. But when not maintained, these RVs can become unhealthy dark dens of mold, mice, risk of fires or CO2 poisoning. Would you want to have your RV right next to one of these people who are basically fire hazards in a box? Sometimes I question if this is even a viable solution, but compared to sleeping in a tent or sleeping under some cardboard or sleeping, in the doorway of some business, it certainly seems like quite an upgrade. So I want to ask you, do you think this is even possible? Is this viable? Is this a scalable solution? Could you see one of these parking lots sprouting up in your neighborhood? And do you think it's about to change? We know that the US and likely Canada here are going through some major leadership changes. That means that by this time next year, things could look different. How could they look different? What do you think is going to change here over the next year? Or is it just going to get worse? Hey, just a reminder, we are almost to 20,000 subscribers, and I want to thank everyone who's already subscribed to this channel. I really hope that this video has earned your subscription, whether you're a subscriber or not. But if you're not, think about clicking that subscribe button. It would really help me out. Make sure you comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Try to keep it civil and keep it nice, but state your mind. You can check out these links to my left and below. RVs Gone Wild is a very exciting series I do if you haven't checked it out. A lot of people like that. And I've got a playlist on the other homeless videos I've done talking about homeless and RVing and all the issues involved. Thanks, everyone.